Swift Runner, likely born in the 1840s, was a Plains Cree, Nehiyaw, hunter, and trapper. He lived in what is now central Alberta, near modern Fort Saskatchewan and Edmonton. Contemporary reports describe him as over 6 feet tall, a strong, capable hunter, pleasant and easygoing in temperament, married with several children, familiar with both Cree traditions and Catholic missionaries. He had worked briefly as a guide for the Northwest Mounted Police, NWMP, but was dismissed for alcohol abuse, a problem that had worsened among many Indigenous communities during this period due to the introduction of cheap whiskey by traders. The winter of 1878 to 1879. This winter was one of the most brutal in years. Game was scarce. Trading posts were far apart. Extreme cold threatened isolated camps. Many families lived on the edge of starvation. The Cree wintered in small hunting groups. Swift Runner took his wife, 6 children, his mother and brother, deep into the forest to trap during the winter of 1878 to 79. What happened there would horrify the region. Swift Runner arrives alone. In the spring of 1879, Swift Runner emerged from the forest, alone. He told members of the Cree community that his family had starved. They died one by one during the harsh winter. He had been unable to save them. However, people immediately grew suspicious. Swift Runner looked well-fed, healthy. Heavier than before, winter began. No one starving looked the way he did. Elders took their concerns to the Northwest Mounted Police. Investigation by the NWMP, Inspector G.S. Crozier, and a patrol began questioning Swift Runner. His story was inconsistent. At first he said his eldest son died of starvation. Then he said wolves killed his wife. Then he claimed one child wandered into the forest. He eventually led officers to his winter camp. The discovery at the campsite. At the camp, NWMP officers found human bones scattered around the site. Many bones were broken open, marrow removed. The skull of one of the children split, a pot used for boiling flesh. The remains of his wife, 6 children, brother, and mother. The scene made it clear the deaths did not happen naturally. Swift Runner had killed and cannibalized his entire family over the winter. But the situation was more disturbing than simple survival cannibalism. There had been food nearby. Police noted the group was only 25 miles from a Hudson's Bay Company post near other Cree camps. If starvation was the issue, help was not far. This raised a deeper fear among Cree elders, the Wendigo affliction. After days of denial, Swift Runner finally confessed. He claimed a Wendigo spirit had visited him in dreams. The spirit called to him, offering to feed him. He was consumed by a violent compulsion. After killing the first family member, the hunger grew. He felt as if something inside him wanted him to continue. His confession was not a dramatic possession story. It was described in mission logs as calm, flat, and emotionless, which disturbed investigators even more. Missionaries believed he was mentally ill. Cree elders believed he had succumbed to WENDIGO sickness, Wendigo sickness, a spiritual breakdown brought on by hunger, isolation, and imbalance. Swift Runner was taken to Fort Saskatchewan for trial in late 1879. Notable factors: it was one of the first major murder trials in the region. The NWMP used it to assert rule of law over the frontier. Missionaries and Cree witnesses testified. Swift Runner showed no fear or confusion. He expressed deep regret that he had let the Wendigo in, but he accepted his fate. The jury deliberated for about half an hour. Verdict: guilty of murder, not for death, by hanging the execution. December 20th, 1879. Swift Runner was executed at Fort Saskatchewan. Witnesses recorded that he walked calmly to the gallows. He joked with his executioners. He showed no visible fear. His last words were, "I am no longer a Wendigo." His execution was the first legal hanging in what would become Alberta. Interpretations, realistic one, Cree cultural interpretation. To many Cree at the time, Swift Runner's condition represented a spiritual sickness, a loss of balance, a violation of the deepest taboos, a breakdown caused by hunger, isolation, trauma, and alcohol dependence. The Wendigo did not mean a monster in the woods. It meant a person corrupted by hunger and imbalance. 2. Mounted police interpretation. The NWMP saw it as severe mental instability, possibly alcoholic psychosis, a rare case of frontier cannibalistic homicide. They did not endorse the supernatural explanation. 3. Anthropological interpretation. Modern historians believe Swift Runner suffered a psychotic break. He may have had schizophrenia, depression, or trauma. Starvation stress could have triggered hallucinations. His belief in the Wendigo provided a framework for his delusion. 4. Cultural clash. The case is a perfect example of Indigenous spiritual interpretation colliding with Canadian legal authority. Jack Fiddler, born around 1839, was an Oji-Cree, Anishinaabe, leader of the Sucker clan. His traditional name was Jawuno Gijigo Gahbo, meaning, "He who stands in the southern sky, stands in the shadow of the sky." He lived in the remote northern region of what is now northwestern Ontario, near Sandy Lake and Big Trout Lake. He was known as a shaman, conjurer, a respected chief, a skilled hunter and trapper, a mediator between families, clans, and spirits, someone deeply knowledgeable in Oji-Cree traditional medicine. His father, Pei-mi-wi-ka-bun, had also been a powerful shaman who fought malevolent spirits, including Wendigo Witiko, according to oral history, the role of a Wendigo killer. In Oji-Cree cosmology, a Wendigo is not a forest monster. It is a human being driven to violence, cannibalism, and spiritual corruption, often linked to starvation, greed, or isolation. A person showing signs of Wendigo sickness might express fear of losing control, become violent, threaten to harm or eat others, suffer delusions or hallucinations, withdraw or act dangerously erratic. In severe uncontrollable cases, shamans were called upon to perform Wendigo prevention. This sometimes meant killing the individual to protect the community. These decisions were extremely rare and deeply painful. They were seen as mercy killings, not murder. According to Oji-Cree oral history, Jack Fiddler had performed this grim duty about 14 times over his lifetime. Most of those he executed were believed to be severely mentally ill, violently unstable, threatening to attack their own families during starvation winters. To Fiddler's people, these were acts of responsibility, not crimes. To the Canadian government, however, they were homicides, the encroachment of the Canadian state. Throughout the late 1800s and early 1900s, the Canadian government expanded its influence into northern Indigenous territory. The Northwest Mounted Police, NWMP, established posts deeper into Oji-Cree land. This brought strict enforcement of Canadian criminal law, missionaries pushing for Christianization pressure to adopt European legal and cultural systems, traditional practices, like euthanizing a violently insane person, became illegal, even if they had been accepted for centuries. The incident that led to arrest. 1906 to 1907, the case that brought attention to Jack Fiddler occurred when the brothers Jack Fiddler and Joseph Fiddler, his brother, killed a woman from their band who had long been mentally unstable. Missionaries had reported that she was threatening violence, speaking uncontrollably, showing signs of psychosis, raving that she felt the Wendigo inside her. Her family requested help. To them, she was suffering from Wendigo sickness and endangered everyone. Jack and Joseph ended her life, believing they were preventing further tragedy. By community standards, they acted out of protection, but Canadian law saw it as murder. 2 Northwest Mounted Police officers, Inspector A.C. Cote and Constable Arthur Bacon McLeod, arrested Jack and Joseph Fiddler for murder. The brothers were bewildered. To them, they had simply fulfilled their shamanic duty. They had no concept that their ancestral justice practices were illegal under Canadian law. The trial and imprisonment. The brothers were taken to Norway House and later the Pass, more than 500 miles away, a journey almost impossible for elderly men in their 60s. Neither spoke English. They had no understanding of Canadian law. They were cut off from their community. Supporters and family missionaries tried to help translate. But the cultural gap was enormous. Jack explained plainly, "She was becoming a Wendigo. We had to stop her. It is the only way." To the court, this sounded like superstition. To Jack, it was practical medicine, police work, and spiritual duty rolled into one. Jack Fiddler's death, October 1907. As the trial dragged on, Jack fell into despair. On October 17, 1907, he escaped custody briefly and walked into the woods. His body was found the next day. He had hanged himself with a piece of cord. He was about 68 years old. The fate of his brother Joseph Fiddler stood trial alone. He was convicted of murder and sentenced to death. However, public sympathy grew. Many settlers, traders, and missionaries had known the brothers for decades and testified that they were peaceful. Their intentions were protective. Their actions were rooted in culture and necessity. The federal government eventually issued a pardon in September 1908, but Joseph never learned of it. He died in prison 3 days before the pardon arrived, likely from pneumonia. Modern interpretation. The Jack Fiddler case is now seen as 1. A clash of legal systems, indigenous restorative and preventive justice versus European-style criminal law. 2. A mental health crisis, interpreted through culture. Those killed were likely suffering severe mental illness, psychosis, or trauma. The Ojibwe interpreted this through Wendigo beliefs. The NWMP interpreted it as homicide. 3. A symbol of cultural oppression. Jack Fiddler's death represents the criminalization of indigenous spirituality, the suppression of traditional medicine, the imposition of foreign courts over sovereign communities. 4. Not connected to modern horror mythology. Modern antlered Wendigo monsters have nothing to do with Jack Fiddler or Ojibwe beliefs. He dealt with real people in deep psychological crisis, not creatures. 5. A tragic frontier story. Jack was a respected leader, a traditional healer, someone caught between two worlds, punished for upholding the values of his own people.